Welcome to job number. Welcome to job number 31, apartment building manager. I was just getting ready to do this, and my wife goes, "Oh, I'm getting ready to do a 52 at 52," and she looks at me and she goes, "Oh, you're still doing those?" She's not a fan. She hasn't been following it. I don't think she's subscribed. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? You just keep pressing on. I will press on this thing, no matter what. We'll finish up. So. Job number 31, apartment building manager. I was living in Santa Monica, California at the time. And it was also at the time, and maybe still is, it was known as Soviet Monica. And the reason it was known as Soviet Monica was because of rent control. The Santa Monica City Council came in because rents were getting astronomical in Santa Monica, because Santa Monica is an amazing place to live. You're by the beach. The weather's perfect. It's fantastic. Good schools. And they're saying, you know what? The rents are getting out of control. We're going to cap the rents. And so the landlords did not like that. So they started calling it Soviet Monica. Now, for the rest of us, people who didn't own like apartment buildings, were just renters, this was fantastic. Now the landlords, they had to do a certain amount of, every X amount of years, they had to prove that they were putting in capital improvements. They couldn't just let everything just become a slum. But guess what? They did the very bare minimum. My boss at Audiovisual Services, I think he lived in the same apartment for 25 years or more. He could still be there today, actually. Once you were in, you were set. We got in. I was living in a small little one bedroom. The people who were managing the apartment, they moved away. And so they said, "Hey, would you guys like to do it?" I was married at the time. And we said, "Sure, this sounds fantastic." Now, the way you would get paid is you would get a reduction in your rent. And also you would have to, like if you had to call a plumber and wait around for the plumber, you got paid to wait around a little bit. Or if you did anything on your own, like fixing a faucet or something simple, or fixing a toilet, things like that, if you did that kind of stuff, you got paid as well. It was pretty cheap. I think it was like $600 for a 2-bedroom. And so then with the thing, it was like $300, or maybe it was $200 a month in rent. And this is when rents were around, $1,200 a month for a one bedroom. This place that I was living in was a 12-unit place, a combination of 2 bedrooms and 1 bedrooms. And they were along the sides like this, and then there was a courtyard, kind of a pretty courtyard in the middle. You had to pay extra for the parking, or you could park on the street. Parking on the street, your cars were always getting like broken into, or they'd steal your registration tags. So it was good to park in the back. And as the apartment building manager, I had a parking spot and a garage, but usually you just put junk in your garage. So I would occasionally do handyman jobs around the place. And there were these old tools and this whole like section where it was like paint cans, and you could kind of go in there and find stuff. And so I remember trying to fix a sink once, and I go in there, and I've fixed sinks before, and I go in there, I'm looking at this sink, and I'm like, what's all this stuff? And there's these strange tools, like these flaring tools that you would flare out some sort of copper pipe, and I'm like looking at this like, what the heck is this? And I'm not going to sweat any pipe, but I'm looking at it all, and I'm trying to fix this sink, and finally it's not working, and I give up, and I call the plumber, and he comes and he looks at this stuff with the flared joints or whatever they were, and he's like, "Man, no one's used this for 20 years, and he just rips the whole thing out and puts in these hoses like they do now. If you go and look under your sink, it's just like a hose. Meanwhile, I'm trying to flare out some sort of something or other. I'm not sure I have too many interesting stories about this job, so I'll just tell you some of the details. One of the duties of your job was to interview potential renters. Now, because it was rent control, there wasn't a lot of turnover, because people, once they got in, they wanted to stay in. But you'd have to, people would look up and you'd check their references and see if they had a job. And mostly it was word of mouth. You never had to put an ad in the paper. You would say, "Yeah, here's this place," and they're like, "Are you going to do anything to it?" It's like, "No, if you want new carpet, you have to pay for the new carpet. If you want it painted, you have to paint it. We're not going to pay for anything," which was nice for a lazy apartment building manager, but not so nice if you wanted to have a nice place. But you know what? People would put in $1,000 in for the carpet and the painting, and then after 3 months or something like that, it's paid for and they're good to go, and the place was kept up reasonably well. I did talk the manager into, I was the manager. I talked the owner, who lived in Utah. I think I did this for 2 years, and I think I met him once. He took me out for dinner once. Talked to him on the phone occasionally. This is before email, but rarely. He had a pretty good situation. Just the money would come in, and he'd be like, "Fine." But I did talk him into painting the trim, this flaky brown trim, and I got it changed to a Kelly green. It wasn't the green that I liked. It was better than the ugly, flaky brown stuff. So, 1 point for me. Some of the other duties I had were collecting the quarters, because there was a laundromat there, and so you would clean that up and you'd collect all the quarters. You would collect the quarters and you put them in the rolls. So you're constantly rolling up quarters. You collected all the rents, and you have to go to the bank once a month or sometimes twice a month because people were late. And there was one guy who was only allowed to pay in cash. He was no longer allowed to write any checks. So he'd come down and hand you stuff. And that guy, oh my gosh, he could talk and talk and talk. He was an older guy, just a crazy contractor, nice guy, but literally you would just have to walk away. I've never met anybody like that. He couldn't get a cue. Like if you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to have to go. He would just you would have to stop, turn around and just walk away. He'd be talking to your back and you would just have to walk away. That's the only way that you could get away from a conversation with that guy, or just not start one. I can't remember that guy's name. Sebastian. It just came to me. Sebastian. I can't remember his last name, but Sebastian, he could talk, man. That was basically the job. It wasn't that difficult. It wasn't hard at all. Because there was only 12 units, not a lot of stuff happened. But around the situation, around the apartment complex, a lot of stuff happened. One night, there was a carjacking out in front of the building. 2 o'clock in the morning, somebody's getting carjacked. If you parked on the street, like I said, I think my car got the window smashed once. In the apartment complex next door to us, someone tossed in an incendiary device into the parking lot, because it was like a lower parking lot, and blew up a car. 2 weeks later, someone burned another house. There was an alleyway. It was kind of kitty corner, and someone burned a house down there. So there was some arson, 2 cases of arson, a carjacking, and then one afternoon, I'm sitting there, and this guy comes running past. I had my door open. This guy comes running past. Boom. I'm like, what's going on? He's just running past. So I kind of run out there and see what's going on. And sure enough, the police come. And like, did you see someone? This guy just stole something. I'm like, oh yeah, I saw him. They come back. They go, we caught him. They come back later. We caught him. Can you be an eyewitness? I'm like, okay. And so they put me in the police car and they drive me over to look at this guy. And wow. Man, there was no way I could tell. It was like, I saw him, but I have no idea if that's him or not. So I just lied and said it was. No, I didn't. Yeah, he deserved it. If he looks this guilty, no, I just said, no, I can't tell. He was running too fast. I didn't get a good look at him. Sorry. Maybe the thief went free. Maybe an innocent man stayed innocent. I don't know. Some of the perks of the job were if you had a loud party, or if you were playing poker till late at night, you would say, hey, what are these guys going to do? Call the manager? I am the manager. But nobody really called. It was quite conflict free. There was lots of, in the alleyway, there was lots of shenanigans. There were lots of shenanigans. There was this alleyway, and the alleyway was fantastic because it was almost like a black hole. Anything you put out in that alleyway, it was gone within like 10 minutes. I had this old IBM Selectric computer. Remember those? Boom. Not computer. Typewriter, an IBM Selectric typewriter. It was kind of broken. I'm like, what am I going to do with this thing? It's super heavy. And I'm moving, and I go, I'm just going to put it out there in the alleyway. And literally within 10 minutes, that thing is just gone. You would never see anyone there picking up the stuff, but it was just like gone. Now my brother Robert, he was an apartment building manager over 250 units in San Jose. And he's got real stories. In fact, I'm going to share one of them because I share it all the time. He comes across, he's walking through the apartments and he sees this. He's on the second floor and he sees this note taped to the door. And it says, Dear Tracy, I threw all your stuff out in the front lawn. I guess you never met a guy with guts before. P.S. Call me if you want to talk. And when you're an apartment building manager, you are in the mix. You are alive on the planet. People are just, you are a part of a community, whether you like it or not. And around the same time, that TV show, Melrose Place, was just coming up. And so you kind of, which character are you? I don't think Sebastian made it to Melrose Place. I don't think I would have made it in Melrose Place. Eventually, I got divorced when I was an apartment building manager. And the owner, he wanted a couple to be to be a manager. And frankly, I was fine because I was working all day at another job, and I didn't really have the energy or the wherewithal to be an apartment building manager anymore. And so he got somebody else to do it. But the person he got they were single, but they were home a lot. So he wanted somebody who was kind of home, like, a lot. And after that, I was unemployed for a while. So divorced and unemployed, which brings me to my next question is, when I was unemployed, I got money. Does that count as a job? Leave a comment in the comment below and weigh in. Because I received money when I was unemployed. I got good stories about being unemployed. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time, 52 at 52. And my wife again will say, are you still doing those? Are you still doing those? Yes is the short answer.